Welcome, everybody. This is the Gigi Presents podcast. I'm public speaking coach Gigi Rosenberg, and I am so delighted to be here today with Linda Cohen. She is a speaker and consultant. Now, I was thinking this week about how long ago I met Linda, and if memory serves me right, I showed up at my first National Speakers Association Oregon chapter meeting. And within 1 minute of being greeted and talking to the person who greeted me, who I can't remember who that was, she looked at me and said, "You have to meet Linda Cohen." So I think she recognized, I don't know what, some similar something. So since then, I've been a colleague and have been following Linda's amazing career. So I am extra delighted to have her on the show today. So Linda Cohen, also known as the Kindness Catalyst, for more than a decade, she has worked with businesses and associations on the ROI of Kindness, which she's going to talk about today. She served for 6 years on the board of the National Speakers Association Oregon chapter, and in 2018-19, she was their president. And I went to a couple meetings when she was, and they were fabulous meetings. Her second book, which I have right here, is called The Economy of Kindness: How Kindness Transforms Your Bottom Line. I also have her first book, 1,000 Mitzvahs, here as well. Like me, she's an Earl Grey Tea aficionado, and we're going to talk a little bit later about how to make the best cup of Earl Grey tea. So welcome, Linda. I'm thrilled to have you here.
Such a delight. I'm so happy to be with you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So my first question is, I invite speakers on the show who do something extraordinarily well. And when I'm sitting in the audience and you're speaking, or watching a video and you're speaking, what I notice is that it's the same Linda who I experience one-on-one as who's on the stage. So my first question is, to be so authentic and so you, so up close and personal, is that just something you were born with? Is that something you cultivate? And if somebody doesn't have that, what advice do you have for how to be that you on the stage? Not you, but themselves on the stage?
Yeah, that's a great question. And did I get that from my upbringing, or did I cultivate that? I would say that I fairly early on heard not to be a diva and not to be someone that was hard to work with. And I think when I started my speaking business, it's easier just to be yourself all the time. Why wouldn't you just want to be yourself? So I guess for me, it was pretty natural to just be me on and off stage. Now, I know that you're talking about some of my stories they're vulnerable and they're personal. And I do share about loss and grief and raising children, being a stay-at-home mom. So I think that sometimes when you are that vulnerable, you're really going to resonate with the people who are listening to you. And for me, that has been something I have continued to cultivate, but I do think it came sort of naturally as well.
Now, but some people, when they get up on the stage, even if they're very personable one-on-one, they suddenly put on like presentation. I'm in presentation mode. They shout, if they were talking to you like that one-on-one, it would be weird. So if someone does that, do you have any advice? Like, what are you doing? Because you're not doing that, Right. So thoughts about how somebody, if they get in that presentation mode, how they can remember to just be the person they are when they're just sitting across the table from you.
Yeah. And I think that was the advice that I got when I first started speaking, was just pretend you're having a conversation with somebody. You're having a cup of coffee with someone, and this is the conversation you would be having with them. Now, as a speaker, you have not only had this conversation one time, you have probably crafted it and honed it, and you know what words you're going to use, right? And your inflections, but you are still yourself in that conversation. So I think as advice I might give is just be yourself. The shouting, I get butterflies. I get nervous when I'm going to get on stage. So I know that I'm going to have that energy running through me. And actually, a new tip that I am leaning into really recently, Gigi, is being a better pauser. Taking a breath and knowing that while I am excited and I have information I want to share, if I keep talking, the audience won't be able to listen to me. And so I am really working, and that is definitely something that does not come that naturally to me. So learning how to really lean into a pause is very important.
That's so great. Well, let's move on. I want to talk about a few things in the economy of kindness that I feel really apply to speaking. So, in one of the chapters, you mentioned this idea of when you do an act of kindness, it would be so great to add a little bit of surprise and delight to it. So I'm just wondering how that might transfer to a speaker. Like, do you try to add surprise and delight, or do you ever witness surprise and delight in somebody who's speaking? And maybe there's an example of that you might have.
Ooh, that is a great question, and you've caught me a little by surprise. So I'm going to have to sit with that and think. I definitely, in the years that I've been in the National Speakers Association and learning how to build a craft, I definitely try to make my keynotes, my trainings conversational and yeah, and I think I do try to add more humor or more something that would be unexpected, or do something in a fun way. I think that as I've been in this, in this work longer, I want to be myself, which is kind of a playful little girl who's grown up but still loves bubbles and laughter and all those things. And so I have definitely added pieces to my keynote that I think are fun. So for me, I guess maybe that's surprise and delight, and tried to make it more interactive. I find that when when I do a lot of engaging with the audience so that maybe I have my content, but I'm also asking them for something. And when they give that to me, then I can riff a little bit on something, because I've been talking about this now for 15 years, there's tons of stories. So I know that I might pull out something I hadn't really planned on that might just be something that I know that is the right thing to share at that moment.
I'm thinking back on your TEDx talk, which was a few years ago. And one of the things I remember, and you're going to have to tell this story because I cannot go into a public restroom without
Oh,
thinking about the toilet paper story, which is in A Thousand Mitzvahs.
yes, it is.
So
Yes, it is.
I want you to tell the toilet paper story, but you use the toilet paper as a prop when you open the TEDx.
Can I grab? You didn't tell me ahead of time that I might be able to grab my prop and have it for you here today.
Is that purple toilet
It's
paper?
purple. I bought a roll of purple toilet paper. Actually, after giving it many years with a white roll, I had somebody say, "Why don't you get a purple roll? Those are my colors." And that would be even better to bring it up. So all right. So the toilet paper roll, I was traveling with my husband and we were out to dinner. It was in Spain. So we're out at a nice restaurant and I go to the restroom, I excuse myself and there's no toilet paper in the bathroom. And I scrounge around under the sink and I find a roll of toilet paper and I replace the roll. And when I walk back to my husband, I'm laughing because at that point I was doing my 1000 mitzvahs project. So I was counting these little acts of kindness and I say, should we count this? Should we count this as a mitzvah? And we laughed, but we realized that, I'm leaving the place a little bit nicer than I found it. So absolutely replacing a roll of toilet paper should be a mitzvah. And there aren't 1,000 of them in the book. There's 90 of them, but the editor and I thought that was a good one to include. And like you said, I talked about it on in my TEDx talk. I talked about it on television and radio everywhere when my first book came out. So, and I still will talk about it kind of as an example of the size of the kindness doesn't really matter, just like replacing a roll of toilet paper. And actually, a couple of years ago, I was giving a talk and I had a speaker friend in the audience and she said, "Oh, Linda, you could go into the 1-ply or 2-ply, the under or over." And as she's telling me that, she's like, that will get even more of a laugh, So it's fun when you get to play with a story, even, and yes, I did the TED Talk in 2011. So it's been a while and it's fun to be able to craft a story even deeper as the years go on.
That's so great. So one of the other things you talk about in the book is in customer service, the greeting is so important. What I want to
Yes.
ask you is, as a speaker, I feel like there are two kinds of speakers. There's the speaker who likes to, and you can do this on Zoom or in person, mingle with the crowd before they begin. And then there's the one who wants to go backstage and be quiet and do some centering. So I was just wondering, which one are you, or are you one or the other, depending on the situation, and what makes you want to do one or the other?
I'm absolutely a mingle with the crowd person.
I had a
I get a lot of energy. I am a huge extrovert, so I get a ton of energy being with the crowd. Now, sometimes you get put backstage if you're coming out into a big, room or a big situation. So sometimes you don't have that opportunity. But if I can beforehand, I will absolutely talk to the people that I'm going to be speaking to. It also makes you have a friendly person in the audience. If you have met somebody or many people, you've sat at a table with people, now you have people in the audience, if you can see them, if there aren't lights glaring in your eyes and you can't see people, but you can imagine who you've talked to in that audience, who's out there. And I think that really helps I think that helps as a speaker. So,
yeah,
and plus,
yeah.
my topic is not rocket science. I talk about kindness and kindness in the workplace. So sometimes I can even glean a little story or a little something. And this was amazing pre-COVID to be able to talk about in my talk, something and then I can call on that person or say what John just told me or Sarah just shared, so makes it really personal in the moment.
Well, I'm so glad you brought up the topic of stories because you do tell so many stories. And I'm wondering, how do you collect those stories? And then how do you vet them? Like, what's your criteria of, oh, there's a little something here. I think this might make a good story. How do you vet them?
So that is such a good question. I have told a lot of stories over the years, and there were stories that I told pre-COVID about my topic of the economy of kindness that really post-COVID, I can't tell anymore because the company has changed. The leadership has changed. Something happened with that company that now I don't really want to be sharing that company as my example. So I think that, storytelling as part of a keynote is a continual growth about what would be a good story to illustrate this point, what would be a good story that will resonate with the groups. I speak in a lot of different industries. I speak a lot in senior living and a great deal to healthcare workers. But recently, I've started working more with credit unions and even Head Start. That's even a newer industry that I'm speaking in. So when I'm speaking in different industries, there's often a story that I like to put into that keynote. If I'm talking to senior living, I'm going to tell how I was an assistant activities director as my first job and I met Rose Brown, and I've worked on that story so that could be something. That wasn't even a story I had remembered until I started getting work with senior living. And then I remembered this story about this first job that I had. So, I've hung around speakers long enough. I have a story notebook. And I've also read some amazing, books about crafting stories. And sometimes you can hone stories, go back into your teenage years, places you've worked, jobs you've had, childhood friends. And certainly if a story pops up to you and you think, oh, this might be something I want to work on, write it down. I write it down. And then I have also on my computer, potential stories for the Economy of Kindness keynote. So it's always a work in progress, and it's always a getting better and tweaking and tightening how you tell your story. Which is funny because I did do my TED Talk in 2011, and sometimes I watch it. Every once in a while, I'll watch it and I'll be like, oh, tell that story so much better now, I think. So
I want to talk now about your everyday kindness videos.
okay,
They started this fall.
mm-hmm.
And Linda had the guts to go into Pioneer Courthouse Square in our hometown of Portland, Oregon. But I don't want to say what you did. I want you to tell us what you did. And I want to know from your point of view, how did you have the guts to do that? And how was it for you? I want to know the whole lead up to doing it and then what was it like when you did it? But first tell us what it is.
Okay, thank you. And it's so sweet. It's so sweet that you saw that and you're asking about that. So actually, my birthday falls on October 9th. And I thought that this year, on my birthday, I really wanted to talk to people about kindness. I have been in this work for more than a decade. I hear amazing stories about kindness happening all the time. And I thought, am I in a silo? Am I, not aware of what's really going on in the world? So I said, I want to go downtown Portland and I'll get a video person. And I have a couple of consultants who work with me in my business. One does my graphic design and one does my newsletters. And so I said, I want the two of you to come with me. We'll hire a video person and we'll go downtown and we'll talk to everyday people. And we'll just ask them about do you get treated with kindness? Do you see kindness happening? And do you feel like social media and media aren't portraying kindness? So it was completely random, and it was not a great day. And I had to like make a backup plan in case it was truly, truly a rainy day. But we went down 12 o'clock on a Tuesday, I think, and we started filming. And, we were calling people, hey, come talk to us. And we did look like we were a crew of some kind with our video camera. And we just talked to people. And in the end, we ended up talking to about 20 people who we were able to entice to come over. And my thought was that if I can talk to people, I will be able to know if I'm living in my own silo or if indeed people do experience kindness every day. And 19 out of 20 people right off the bat gave me great conversations about kindness. Oh yeah, somebody in the coffee shop just did something for me. I ended up talking to an NFL linebacker, retired. I didn't know that because he was just wearing a sweatshirt and a cap, but later on I realized who it was. That was kind of exciting. And I talked to one gentleman who was not from the United States. He had grown up in New Zealand. I met him right when he was about to hop on a train, and he said people don't look at him, people don't smile at him. He feels like it's a very strange place to live in the United States with this. And at the end, I shook his hand and he gives me this big smile, and it felt really gratifying to know that even our little interaction could leave him feeling a little happier and that he'd been treated with some kindness that day. So
wow. So
yeah.
were you nervous though before you walked up to your first person? You weren't.
No. I just thought it was going to be fun. I'm a little bit crazy like that, Gigi. Like I really love people, and I just thought it would be fun. I mean, it was fun also with the video guy, and he was telling me where to stand and do this. And there are some outtakes that you obviously don't get to see. I made 4 videos out of the content that we got that day, but he made me ask some questions with a different angle so we could cut that in. So, camera magic or whatever. It was really fun. It was actually really fun. So
it was the two of you, the videographer and you.
There were 5 of us down there, actually.
That's great.
5 of us. There was the 2 women who are helping me with, my business, right, some of the back end stuff, the video guy. And he asked for us to have another man come with us. He was a little nervous being in downtown Portland, to be honest, right, with video equipment, because, downtown Portland has a lot of people who are on the streets and having some mental health issues. And so he was a little nervous about that. And we did actually get to talk to a couple of people who had been homeless. One of the gentlemen we talked to came over, and we were also giving out, I had these be kind signs. I had made some little bags of, we call them blessing bags. I had with socks and some food, just in case we ran into people that I wanted, because it was my birthday. And I sort of felt like this is what I wanted to do, was also be doing some kindness and be talking to people about it. So to be honest, it was beyond my wildest expectations. It was a lot of fun. And in my big like vision, I'd actually love to do something like this and have it get on, television. Yeah. I would actually love something like this to be seen. Like, this is really what people are feeling. And the media and social media isn't amplifying kindness in the way I wish they were. So,
right. Oh, that's so great. Wow. Well, on another topic, I coach a lot of people, or some people reach out to me for coaching, I should say that, who are interested in having a career as a professional speaker. And that's not my, I coach people once they have the gig and all that. So what does someone need to build a speaking business? If you are a newbie and want to know, how do I get started? What's some advice you have for them?
All right. So quick advice. You want to build a business. Number 1, it's not going to all be you up on stage from the get-go, right? There's a lot of sales and marketing that you have to do to be able to get on stage. Some tools you might need to have: a one sheet, which talks about what you talk about, a video that shows that you can hold an audience and you can be, engaging as a speaker. I joined Toastmasters in the early days of in fact, I think when you and I first met, I was probably in my Toastmaster years. I was part of that organization for 10 years. Great place to learn platform skills, speaking skills. You'll be in a club and people will give you feedback, and you can learn how to do impromptu speaking as well as structured speaking. And if you're in it for long enough, there's actually, keynote, and there are ways to get better at how you are speaking. And then I joined the National Speakers Association. This is the professional association I know where you said you and I met. And that association really taught me more the business of speaking, and how do I get work? And, if somebody hires me in long-term care, how do I get the next piece of work in long-term care? And so, it's a long journey. And, I know so many incredible journey speakers who have been in this industry for a long time, but there's not a single way to do it. You can have your own. You maybe are a keynote speaker who gets training and consulting. You may be a facilitator, and sometimes you do some speeches at association meetings. There's so many different ways to build your business. But I would say start speaking somewhere so you know that you can hold an audience, get a one sheet, come join National Speakers Association and see what we're all about.
So I'm wondering now, what surprised you most about the business of speaking or just being a professional speaker? Is there anything that surprised you, like now that your career has grown so much?
Yeah. I mean, I knew that you needed to be able to sell yourself and market yourself, but I think that is something that surprises people. I think people think I'll put out my shingle and I'll be able to say I'm a speaker and then suddenly my phone will start ringing, and it doesn't happen. I mean, you have to, it's a craft and you're getting better at your craft and you're selling your product, which is you and the services you provide for a company. And what pain points do you solve for them? I guess one thing, now that you're asking me, one thing that surprised me was how much pushback I had at the beginning of my speaking business because of my topic. I speak about the ROI of kindness. And people in my association in the early days, when I still was getting myself solid, they said, "Who's going to hire you to talk about that?" And to be honest, I really didn't know. I wasn't sure in the early days who was going to hire me. But because of my story and how I fell into this topic, I just knew this is where I was supposed to be. And I will say now, 15 years later, there are many speakers who add kindness to their customer service or their leadership. It's a pretty big buzzword these days. And so I sort of feel grateful that I stayed with it and didn't let the naysayers stop me, because I absolutely know I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing right now.
Yeah, you absolutely are.
Yeah.
And that's so interesting. I think what people can glean from your answer too is they need a topic, they need a point of view, they need something they're bringing to the party that feels like it's a framework or it's a way of looking at things or whatever. So, and you
Totally.
had that right at the beginning and didn't, because the thing is, if everyone agrees that it's a good topic, it might not be cutting edge enough or it might not be new enough.
Sure. Well, and the other thing is, as I grew my business, I needed to know, why is kindness relevant in the workplace? And I remember people saying, so what problem does this solve in the workplace? And that had me thinking about what it was. And, I originally said, your reputation of your organization, if you don't have a culture of kindness, you are being able to retain talent and recruit talent. And so later on, when I realized that these were pretty big buzzwords in HR, I was like, wow, I don't know how I knew that, but I kind of felt proud of myself that I had come to that from just the work that I was starting to do. So
you also mentioned Toastmasters as a good organization to join. Yeah. And I'm just wondering, do you see any pros and cons of Toastmasters, or like what's the good side and is there a downside?
So I will say yes. Toastmasters is a lot of times people who are not professional speakers. They really aren't necessarily even aspiring to be professional speakers. They are people who maybe have a job. Maybe their bosses told them they want to have more speaking skills. So they'll go to a club and they'll just learn, how do I feel more comfortable? How do I feel like I'm not going to die when I have to give a presentation? And my first club was a kind of a neighborhood club. I will say that. Lots of people from lots of different industries. Nobody was going on to be a speaker. But I will say that all of the years in that club taught me, when my first book came out, how to answer questions when I got media, interviews right away when the book came out, how to do radio, how to think on my feet when people were going to ask me a couple of questions. So I loved that experience. And there was such a nice group of people who supported me as I was growing into becoming a professional speaker. Now, my second club, I was in for about 4 years after that first club, and that was a professional club. It was a sister club with Toastmasters and National Speakers Association that still exists here in the Portland metro area. And that club had such a high level of feedback and such a high level of how you had to really improve. I was terrified when I walked into the club the first day because I was still, growing into my professional speaker-ness. And I was scared when I saw the feedback that they got. But I felt like that club really taught me. So I would say if you're going to be a professional speaker, look for a club that's maybe a higher end club. I mean, I don't want to say that. That sounds a little bad, but I will also say that there are some things that you do in Toastmasters because of the culture that, then you get into the National Speakers Association and you say, okay, we do want to make sure you don't say ums and ahs and so's. Clearly, we don't want you to be a lip smacker. Like there are definitely things we don't want you to do, but there are some things that Toastmaster culture does, which are a little less what you want to do when you become a keynote speaker. So there were a few things that I have to relearn as I stepped into that.
So I want to ask you something that many people ask me. Sometimes people think, oh, if I just memorize my talk, it will go better. And I find that is the road to, that is not a good thing to do. So how do you deal with, do you have notes? Do you memorize? Do you use a teleprompter ever, et cetera? Like how do you balance?
Yes, and yes, all of those things.
Tell me a little bit about how you decide I'm going to use this for this, this for this, and this for that.
So what has worked for me is if I'm doing a keynote, I will print out the 16 keynote slides that I am doing. So now I have a page that has 16 little bitty pictures on it. I will put the time that I'm starting, the time that I'm ending. I'll write a couple of little notes for myself, what stories I tell. I mean, at this point, the beginning of my keynote is very similar. Maybe I tell the news story for long-term care, but I tell a different story for credit union. But I know that this first slide is going to be my origin story, and I'm going to talk about that. My second slide is going to be about why kindness matters in the workplace. I talk about reputation, recruitment, retention. So when I look at those slides, they are placeholders for me to know what I'm going to talk about on each of those slides. And I will typically put that, on the table, up on the stage, or on the podium, or if I have a lectern. I never stand behind that, though. So for me, it's really making eye contact with the audience. And sometimes if I'm doing new content, I will even and I have it on the floor, I'm not going to lean down to get it, but I will do squares with the title that I'm doing. If I'm learning something new and I'm doing a keynote with a little bit of a different format, I might play with it. I'm practicing it many times before I get up there. I had to do some videos this last year for one of my senior living clients, and I had a huge, Post-it note, big enough that I could see it across my living room because I was going to be delivering that in a conference room with 5 people, and I needed to be able to see my notes on the other side of the conference room. So I practiced that. But for me, that putting my little slides on a piece of paper and writing a few notes, and especially my times, to make sure that when I'm up there, I don't, miss my time. Biggest thing for a professional speaker, you end when they tell you to. And even if that means you lost 10 minutes because the president went long or whoever talked a little longer, cut something out, and what your little sections are. So you might be able to cut something out. But that has really worked well for me because it's sort of a trigger, a reminder for what I'm going to say, but I kind of know what my slides what's in that section.
But it sounds like you can check your notes while you're going if you need to. Yes or no?
I can. Yeah. I can.
But also it sounds like you've rehearsed enough that you know it in your bones.
Totally. Yeah. Well, that's what I was going to say with you in terms of memorizing is that at this point, some of the stories, I mean, it's funny, you asked me about the toilet paper story. I probably haven't said that story now in a year, but you say it and immediately I had done that story many times. So that story is in me. My Rose Brown story is in me. My origin story, I have said thousands of times, but when I deliver it, I want you to feel like it's the first time I've ever said it. And I think part of that, we can talk a little bit more, but I've just come back from Heroic Public Speaking course. And I don't know if you know anything about them, but they're really teaching about performance skills and performance as part of being an even better keynote speaker. And it was fascinating. And I learned a lot at that training. And I am definitely going to start implementing some of that because I've never been a memorizer like you. I've never wanted to memorize it, but I do know some of my stories because I've told them, many times.
Right. So in terms of the TEDx, though, that's something that you had to memorize, right?
I did.
Yeah.
Yes.
But you delivered that in a way that it didn't sound like you were delivering something that you had memorized.
I had practiced that. I mean, I think it was like a 16-minute talk, and I think I had practiced that for 100 hours to give the 16-minute talk. So
Wow.
I think when you're under that kind of a situation, you can't really use notes. So you have to deliver something. I think
Yeah.
there were notes. I think there were notes on my table at that
Right.
talk, but
Right.
you're not going to go looking at your notes. So you
Yeah.
really have to know your material.
Yeah. So, many people who reach out to me are also super interested in doing a TED or a TEDx
Yeah.
talk.
Yeah.
And what's the story behind that? How did you get that? Has it helped your career? Has it done anything for you? Was it an enjoyable experience? I'm just wondering about the TEDx.
So it's an interesting question. I'm glad I did it. I'm really happy I did it. I did it on the 5th anniversary to my dad's passing in Denver, Colorado. I actually knew the person who was the organizer at the time. She was somebody I had met professionally. And so when I applied, I think that I had a little bit of a uplift because of that. And this was a very newish TEDx talk platform for her. It was actually on my son's 11th birthday. And I remember feeling really, really torn whether I should go to that because I was going to miss his birthday and had a lot of guilt about that. And I decided, a TED is really important to have as part of your credentials. I'm glad I did it when I did it because I think now I'd probably put more pressure on myself to do one. And, having done that one in my mid years of my Toastmaster experience, I trained for it with Toastmaster mentors. And I think it was good. I think it was good for where I was in my career. Has it gotten me work? We didn't get the recording for a year. I cannot remember why, but there was like a year when I did not have the recording. So I didn't get to use it at the time to like market myself. Now I remember being super disappointed about that, but I think it's been good to have. And I do think it's a good, everybody I know who's done a TED Talk, it's, you go through something like that, the preparation for it and the actual thing, and it is so much energy outlay about getting ready for it that it's a good experience. It teaches you some confidence you might not have had. So I don't think it's a bad idea. And, in these days, some of them go viral, like huge viral, and maybe yours will be the one. So
That's great. Well, shall we talk about Earl Grey Tea now?
yes, let's definitely talk about Earl
My
Grey
first
Tea.
question for you is what brand of Earl Grey Tea is your favorite and why?
It's called Harney's and Son. It's out of New York City, and we've been drinking Harney's for 20 plus years. Originally, you used to only be able to order it online, I think you had to call them to get it. I can't remember if it's Supreme Earl Grey. They have an Earl Grey that has the most amazing bergamot. It tastes so good. You open it up and it just smells incredible. My husband's actually not an Earl Grey drinker, so I will often make him a separate pot of tea if I'm going to drink my Earl Grey, but hot water, freshly boiled, warm the teapot, always in a teapot. And then, I love it. I've even used foamed milk, but milk. Sometimes I'll do lavender as well to make a London fog and then foam my milk. And that feels like a bit of a decadent treat in the afternoon.
So this is not tea bags then. You're getting your
loose tea.
Loose tea.
And a loose tea. Yeah.
Okay.
They do have tea bags, and actually it's like a triangle shape. So you could do it and it still tastes pretty darn good. But I've been a real tea brewer since the 90s, late 90s. So
all right. Well,
what brand do you drink?
Well, I actually drink a local brand, Smith Tea.
Yes.
Yes. Lord Bergamot.
Lord Bergamot. Yes.
Oh, is it pronounced Bergamot?
I don't know.
Oh.
How do you pronounce it?
I say Bergamot, but who knows?
I don't know. We'll have to look that one up, Gigi.
We'll have to find out.
That was probably one of the first brands that I was drinking too.
The smell is amazing. And I just got myself a beautiful stainless steel, it's a tea strainer that you can take and put right in the cup.
Perfect.
And so it has lots of room to go around.
Perfect.
If I'm in a rush, I'll use tea bags, but not as good.
Yeah.
But
well, if you do check out Harney's and Son, they do have tea bag. You can buy them in a 50 pack. I go through that pretty fast, but it's loose enough that I can make myself a cup of tea if we're going to have a different something, the two of us. So.
That's great.
And we've actually been tea drinkers morning and afternoon for many, many years. Just we love to take a break and a moment and have a cup of tea. So.
That's great. Well, Linda, tell people how they can find you and what you want them to find you about.
Awesome. So thank you, Gigi. It's been so fun to get the chance to talk together. My website is Linda Cohen Consulting. I do 3 programs currently. One is a keynote, my Economy of Kindness keynote. And I also do a Kindness Essential package, which is a keynote plus videos for your employees. So maybe the keynote is for your leadership and the videos are for your employees. I've had a couple of clients use those as requirements for their teams about the culture they want to create in the organization. And I also include 12 bite-sized kindness tips. So you get one every month. And then I created a Kindness Essential package when I started getting asked about doing more consulting, deeper dive cultural work. And that package is really for my clients who want to talk maybe with their emerging leaders, maybe with a leadership team about everything to do with kindness, including communication, recognition, self-care for busy leaders, why kindness matters. The ROI of Kindness is one of the first modules, and that's six half-day programs. So so if anybody wants to reach out to me, Economy of Kindness is available on Amazon. This is also a place where you can get great stories that I've shared. So
great. Linda, thank you so much. And thanks everybody for listening. This has been Gigi Rosenberg in conversation with Linda Cohen. I'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.